Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing great today. So, EA Sports just dropped a brand new title update for FC 26, version 1.1.0. And yeah, this one's actually worth talking about because it's not just a tiny patch fixing shirt textures or crowd noise. This one genuinely changes how the game feels, especially when you're defending or building up play. I've been testing it out for a while, comparing it with how things felt pre-update, and honestly, this patch feels like EA finally took the community feedback seriously, especially all the complaints about sluggish defending, weird animations, and tackles that felt like you were just sliding into air. Let's unpack everything because this update changes the way matches play out from the first whistle to the final kick. So, right off the bat, let's talk about something that's been driving people nuts for weeks: the kickoff goals. You know what I mean? Those annoying situations where someone just runs straight from kickoff, hits a few step overs, and somehow your defenders part like the Red Sea. EA has actually tuned this. The defensive line now reacts better during those early moments, especially in competitive settings. It feels like your players are reading the attack faster, holding shape, and tracking runners more logically. You can still get punished if you rush tackles, but it's no longer the guaranteed kickoff meta nonsense where one simple run down the middle equals a goal. The whole pacing from kickoff just feels fairer now. And that alone makes matches feel more balanced. Now let's talk about defending in general, because this is where the update hits hardest. Before, it felt like your defenders were made of jelly sometimes. You'd press tackle, win the ball for half a second, and somehow the ball would bounce right back to the attacker. That's been one of the most frustrating parts of FC 26 since launch. After the update, tackles finally feel like they have real weight. When you time them right, your player stays engaged and the ball is more likely to stay under your control. EA mentioned they adjusted double tackle inputs and behind tackle wins, and you can really feel that in gameplay. The animations are cleaner, less clunky, and the recovery after a challenge doesn't leave your player on the floor doing yoga poses for 3 seconds. That's huge because it means defending is no longer about luck. It's about timing and positioning again. They've also changed how players stay back during corners, which is one of those subtle tweaks that actually changes how matches flow. Before, it was way too easy to get countered after taking a corner, even if you told players to stay back while attacking. Now, those instructions finally make sense. Your defenders hold their ground better, which means fewer cheap goals conceded after a corner kick. It's small, but trust me, it makes a difference across a few matches. Jockeying feels smoother too. I know a lot of players, especially those who defend manually, were complaining that jockeying was inconsistent. Sometimes it was too fast, other times way too sluggish, almost like your defender was skating on ice. EA seems to have tweaked the responsiveness here, making the left trigger jockeying more reliable and snappy. You can now properly track attackers without that frustrating delay that made it impossible to react in tight spaces. Combine that with improved tackle logic, and defending just feels much more controlled overall. You can actually enjoy manual defending again, which is something I couldn't say confidently before this patch. Then we've got ball control, and this one's interesting because it affects both attacking and defensive transitions. Before the update, trapping the ball sometimes felt inconsistent. Your player would either trap it perfectly or take a touch so heavy it felt like a clearance. This patch tightens that up a lot. The first touch is more predictable, and the way players absorb passes now depends more on their control stats and playstyles. EA also fixed that weird issue where the game would sometimes trigger an unnecessary fancy trap animation when you didn't want it. That was especially frustrating in online matches where milliseconds count. Now you only see those animations when a player actually has the right playstyle, or you intentionally flick the right stick for flare control. It just feels cleaner and more intentional, which is all we really wanted. Passing got some love too. There's a noticeable difference in responsiveness, especially in fast passing sequences. One-touch passing feels snappier, and through balls feel a little sharper when your players are in motion. The ball physics haven't drastically changed, but the way passes connect between players feels smoother. There's less of that slight input delay where you'd press pass and wait half a second for your player to react. For players who love possession football, this change is going to make a world of difference. You can actually build up patiently without the fear of your players freezing mid-play. Goalkeepers also got some subtle tuning. EA adjusted keeper logic, especially in one-on-one situations. You'll notice that keepers are slightly more aggressive at closing down angles, but they don't overcommit as much as before. There were moments pre-update where keepers would rush out unnecessarily or dive too early. Now, they seem to read the attacker better. Reflex saves look cleaner and the rebound control seems improved. It's not perfect, but it's definitely more balanced, and you'll concede fewer of those random soft goals that felt like the keeper just glitched. Dribbling and skill moves got some polish as well. I noticed EA fixed that annoying bug where players would mix up certain skill moves like the croqueta and ball roll, depending on your camera angle or timing. That's gone now. The inputs are much more consistent, so if you've been practicing combos or using skill moves in tight spaces, you'll appreciate how much smoother it feels. First-time fake shots, especially in the box, are more reliable now too. Before, the ball would sometimes just fly off your foot like you were clearing it. Now the animation is cleaner and your player maintains better control over the ball, giving you more freedom to create space and take those quick finishing chances. Speaking of finishing, there isn't a massive overhaul there, but you might notice that certain finishing animations look slightly refined. Volleys, for instance, have less delay in triggering, and power shots feel just a bit more consistent in terms of aim and accuracy. It's not a major change, but enough to make finishing feel smoother in key moments. Combined with better ball control, attacking feels more fluid overall. Now, let's move on to modes, starting with Ultimate Team. The update included some tuning to rewards and objectives. EA hasn't gone into deep detail about which ones were changed, but from what players are noticing, the progression pacing feels slightly better. Some objectives track more accurately now, like those annoying ones that wouldn't count properly even after you completed the requirement. There's also been a small tweak in matchmaking stability. Matches load faster, and there's been fewer disconnections or error messages since the patch went live. Visual bugs with player cards and menus are also cleaned up a bit. It's not a full rework, but it's noticeably smoother when you navigate through your club. Career mode players, you didn't get left out either. EA added a batch of fixes and performance improvements, especially related to the new systems introduced in FC26 like Manager Live and player archetypes. Some players were reporting issues with development plans not progressing correctly, or certain cutscenes freezing. Those seem to be resolved now. The AI transfer logic also feels slightly more sensible. Teams don't make as many bizarre signings anymore, and the overall balance between top-tier and mid-table clubs seems more realistic when simulating multiple seasons. It feels like career mode is finally starting to stabilize after all the early bugs from launch. Clubs mode, which has quietly built a solid player base this year, also benefits from this update. EA mentioned stability fixes and improvements to both matchmaking and in-game responsiveness. A few animation desyncs and visual glitches that happened when joining matches with crossplay enabled seem to be fixed. Player models look sharper, especially in stadium lighting, and the match flow feels smoother. There's also some tuning in XP gain, which might make progression slightly more balanced between casual and hardcore players. It's not a flashy change, but it improves the overall quality of life for clubs players. One of the best things about this update is that it doesn't feel like EA just threw a bunch of random changes together. It actually feels cohesive. The defending fixes complement the attacking tweaks, and both combine to make matches feel fairer. There's a real balance now between risk and reward. You can still get punished for overcommitting, but you're also rewarded for smart manual play. That's the kind of equilibrium players have been begging for since launch. Now, is this update perfect? Not quite. There are still occasional moments where the ball physics feel unpredictable, especially in rebounds or when deflections happen. And some players are reporting that keepers might still have the occasional brain freeze during set pieces. But compared to where the game was at launch, this is easily one of the most meaningful patches yet. It actually changes the rhythm of how people play. I also think this update is a hint at where EA wants to take FC26 moving forward.